Hello, this is Mrs. Bellick, and I'm going to continue our discussion on location, climate, and natural resources, and how these factors affect where people live and how they trade in Europe. Specifically, we looked at and talked about the United Kingdom and Germany for most of my classes. We're going to recap a little bit more of Germany, and then we're going to move on to Russia if you're in my on-level class, and then Russia and Italy if you're in my AC classes. So without further ado, let's get started. Don't forget, before we start taking notes, you're going to take this organizer out from Friday. And again, we should have the United Kingdom filled out, or most of Germany filled out. And then we're going to be finishing up Russia today. And if you're in my AC class, we'll be finishing up Russia and Italy. Okay, whatever is not finished, I have the PowerPoint posted so that you can finish up the notes before class tomorrow, because we will be doing some readings and questions and a checkpoint on Thursday. So where people live and how they trade. And this is a recap from Friday for most classes, but where people live in Germany. Most of the people in Germany live in urban areas, about 85%. And remember how that compared to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is actually even a little bit more urbanized, but Germany is one of the most densely populated countries in Europe. Most of the people, as you can see, and this is a population map off to the right-hand side, you can see most people are living on the western side or the southwest side, and you see the population density. You can also see, if you know where the Rhine River is, that is where most of the dense population is situated. Again, you do have some situated in the northern part because you've got port cities and access to the North Sea, but for the most part, most of those cities are situated along the Rhine River, and that's why it is so important. And the Rhine River is extremely important for trade. Most of the German cities lie along that Rhine River. It's easy to ship things all the way into the heart of Germany from the North Sea, and it gives really people an excellent way to trade and travel, and allows them to make a lot of money along that Rhine River. So that's where you're going to see most of the cities situated in Germany. And again, if you need to pause, you can sure pause and write what you need to for your notes. And this just shows you some pictures of the Rhine River and how the cities look different but are all situated, it's beautiful, along the Rhine. So now we're on Russia. So let's talk a little bit about Mother Russia. What do you notice about Russia? You guys pause it now and have a discussion. Where do you think most people might want to live given the elevation and what you see the physical feature map shown? So you can pause it here. And as you can see, the Ural Mountains, again, is our demarcation and divides both Russia into Asia on the east side and Europe on the west side. And so the northern European plain does run into and the upper part of the north west corner of Europe or of Russia. And then you see these high elevation, and these are going to be your mountain ranges. So there's not going to be a lot of water access along the east side. You have water access along the northern coast, but we'll talk about some of the limiting effects of that. And you see a lot of mountainous regions. Not a lot of people are going to live in the mountains. And then you've got the Siberian plain here, and then you've got some rivers. You have the Volga River here, and you've got a little bit of the northern European plain. So if I'm going to take a guess, I'm going to guess that most people are going to live around St. Petersburg, Moscow side, or the European side, just based on the physical features and some of the limiting effects on the eastern side of Russia. So let's take a closer look. Location. Russia spans over 2 continents. both in Europe and Asia. And remember, those Ural Mountains divide Russia into those two continents. It is so long and the terrain is so expansive that it takes an entire train trip to get, it takes a week to get from one end to the other. So just to kind of give you a perspective on the size of Russia. Russia borders 15 countries. Well, that seems like an advantage because they've got a lot of what we talk about elbow partners to trade with. That's going to be a problem because it doesn't give them what? If you think about it, it doesn't give them a lot of port cities. And that's going to be a bit of a challenge for Russia as we look at some of the limitations and the maps of Europe. The eastern side is bound by the Pacific Ocean. The north is bound by the Arctic Ocean. But remember, if we go back to this map here, if I can get my mouse to work, if we go back here, these are all highlands. It's not coast. It's going to be very difficult. The terrain is such, it's cold. It's not going to have the ability to build a lot of ports along the eastern side. The north is going to be pretty limiting, as you'll see here in a second. So while it does have the Pacific, they're going to have some challenges to build some ports along that the eastern side of the country. The closest point of Russia, and again, if we look at that map in a second, Russia is only really 3 miles apart from the United States. And you say, what? But if you look, you see North America up here. This part is right here. There used to be a land bridge, and we'll look at that in a second. But you used to have a land bridge from Russia to the United States or North America, and now it's underwater. So the closest point is across that Bering Strait, but the Bering Strait is now underwater, and so this isn't actually a kind of a cooler or closer view. But you've got Alaska here. It used to be a land bridge from Russia on the Siberian side over here. Now, if you know anything about Alaska, how cold it is and frozen, this, again, these eastern port side of Russia is not going to be ideal for shipping and trading. But again, people were able to cross at one point through that land bridge. But that is kind of interesting. And again, this just gives you another glance at Russia and how expansive it is. Most of the cities you can see are situated where? You do have some on the eastern side, but most are situated, in the European side or the European continent side of Moscow. So most of those cities are situated also on the Volga River, some of those big, large cities there. St. Petersburg is situated right by one of the water access. And then you've got Murmansk up here, which is also going to be an important city for Russia. And we'll get to that in a second. So Russia only has 2 seasons, so we're on climate. So find your climate box. Make sure that you're in the right spot. And so you've got 3 points to write down. One is that it has 2 seasons. It's pretty much winter and summer. They don't really have a fall or spring, and it's pretty extreme when they have either one of those 2 seasons. The average yearly temperature is below freezing. So that means most of the year it's below freezing, and 32 degrees is below freezing. So that just gives you some perspective as to the climate there. The Asian side, which is in Siberia, is the most extreme climate. It has lows 40 degrees, and their highs can be into the 90 degrees. Most parts of Russia are permanently frozen, however. So most of it is going to be not usable land, because we've already talked about permafrost and the limitations. You can't farm on it. It's hard to drill into. Even if you do have resources, it prevents you from really accessing those that land. 73% of their population lives on the European side because it's warmer. So and again, you see the swing in temperatures, but it is very extreme on the Siberian side. Natural resources. They do have a lot of forests, so they have a lot of lumber. And a lot of that lumber has been cleared for cities, especially again on the European side, because that's where most people have, the population has condensed, and the population density is more pronounced on the western side of Russia, which is the European side. They do have a lot of natural resources, but we're going to look here at some of the limiting factors to access those natural resources. They have gold, aluminum, ore, coal, iron ore, and that's a typo, it should be iron ore, found in the Ural Mountains. So again, that's how we make steel. Coal is your energy source, gold, and a lot of those are along those Ural Mountains. The Volga River is the largest and longest river in Europe, and it's a major source of hydroelectric power. So what they do is they use that moving water to generate power, and it's going to be another big important source of energy for them, because they're going to harness the power of that moving water. So those are some of the natural resources that Russia does have. Russia's size, it's very rugged. And again, you see from this elevation map here how high these mountain ranges can be. And the terrain is very rough. And in the Siberian side, it's where they used to send all their prisoners, because even if they would escape, they would never survive the terrain. They didn't really even, they had guards, but they didn't have to have a lot of guards there, because if you would escape, the elements would ultimately kill you. And so escaping really wasn't an option. And they have, and still to this day, have their prisons in Siberia. The climate is very cold. It makes it very difficult for Russia to access their natural resources. Because of where those resources are, because of the frozen ground, because of the terrain and the climate, while they have resources, it's just very prohibitive. It makes it very difficult to be able to get to them and use them. Where people live. So Russia is one of the most populous countries in the world, with 145.5 million. It's actually a little higher than that currently. Most people live, again, on the west of the Ural Mountains, or on the western side of Russia, where the climate is milder. Now, it's not mild by any stretch, but the climate is milder compared to the more extreme climate that you see in Siberia and on the eastern side of those Ural Mountains. They do have some fertile land, because that northern European plain that we saw in some of those earlier slides does run through the very northern part and the northwest part of Russia. So they do have some arable land. And so you see here, this is our population map. Not too many people living in the light yellow. Again, extreme cold. You've got the Arctic Circle. The land is permanently frozen. It's usually very extreme temperatures on the eastern side. Most people are living on the European side or the western side. Most of them are also, their cities are situated by the Volga River. Much like Germany and the Rhine, the Volga is to Russians. So location and trade. European Russia is mostly landlocked. So remember, we talked about those 15 countries that are trading partners or elbow partners to Russia. Some of those neighbors are even hard to get to and trade because of the mountainous region that Russia is located on. So it is very difficult to trade, especially via ship. They really only have two good usable ports. That's Murmansk and St. Petersburg, and that's again on the western side of Russia. Those two ports we'll look at again, but those two usable ports, because they're on the western side, they're sometimes somewhat limited to year-round on when they can ship. It's not open all year round. It's going to depend on the type or the time of year and if those waters are not frozen. Because of the seaport, St. Petersburg is a major hub of trade. Again, you've got two cities that are situated and have usable ports, Murmansk, St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg is going to be your largest one. What they have also done, because